Well, thank you all for being here today. We're so excited for this June Lunch and Learn, where we'll hear from Elaine Miller-Karras and Dr. Michael Sapp from the Trauma Resource Institute. And they'll tell us a little bit more about how you can integrate skills and concepts of community resiliency model and apply that to support recovery and healing during and after disasters. We have Elaine Miller-Karras, and she is the co-founder and executive director emeritus of the Trauma Resource Institute and developer of the Trauma and Community Resiliency Models, which is used in over 75 countries. And then we have Dr. Michael Sapp, who is a licensed clinical psychologist and the CEO of the Trauma Resource Institute. We're so excited to have them here today to discuss this really important and amazing work that they've been doing. And I will hand it over to them.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And Mike and I are ready, and we're very excited about presenting this to you. When we say we've been in 77 countries, we're actually both in Ireland right now doing a training for a number of individuals, including therapists who've come from Ukraine. So I think it's the first time, isn't it, Mike, that we have slides in Ukrainian and English going on at the same time.
Yes.
But we feel so blessed to be here in Georgia. So, Mike, you want to say something as we get started?
Well, yeah, I just want to say thank you for joining us and inviting us to come and present. And like Elaine said, we're excited to present this material to you, and we hope you find it helpful in the ways that we have.
So what we call this, and we actually have a new programs that are being developed within the Trauma Resource Institute called the Disaster Relief Mobilization Community Resiliency Model, and we call it Dream CRIM for short. And we certainly have had plenty, oh my goodness, more ways than I'd like to say to apply it in the last few months, not only in what's happened in North Carolina, certainly the floods in Georgia, hurricanes. Oh my goodness! And then I live in Los Angeles County, and we have had terrible fires here that have devastated two cities. So we're going to integrate a little bit about how we've responded. Now, the intention of us for this lunch and learn is not to explain the entire community resiliency model to you, but we'll let you know where you can take some free workshops online. But you also have probably per capita and lots of CRIM teachers in the state of Georgia, and we're really proud of that. So as we get started, and this is something as we start, that we start when we go into disasters. We've done a lot of groups. Let's say, for example, in LA County, Mike and I were just at a school in the Palisades and working with some groups in another part of the city. Um, but we start with these questions. What or who is helping you get through right now? What or who has helped you through difficult times in the past? And have there been moments of generosity that come to mind as you reflect on the last few weeks? So I'm going to ask you right now to answer one of those questions for yourself. What or who helps you get through when things are tough for you, when you've had difficult times? And maybe there's moments of generosity that stand out to you that, oh my goodness, this has happened. Like Mike recalled because we're doing this training, and one of our Ukrainian friends, who's a psychologist, told us when she was displaced, she was on a train, and when they would stop at the different cities along the way, the townspeople from the cities would have food for the people on the train, realizing that they were displaced. Those kinds of acts of generosity make a difference to amplify when there's been disasters. So just take a moment to do that. And I'm going to invite you to put it in the chat if you'd like. And maybe, Mike, if there's anybody putting anything in the chat, we might be able to call those out.
Well, our wonderful Vera Salzburn, my
Oh,
baby Ukrainian American baby. Is it Kalina? Kalina. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
well, and Vera Salzberg, we have a free iChill app that's available to people, and she's our voice of our Ukrainian iChill. So right there from beautiful, beautiful Georgia.
And then we have Shay that mentioned faith.
Faith. Let's see if anybody else mentions anything.
Faith, friends, family, truly faith, trying to hold on and block out negative thoughts. Yep. My colleague Nikki has been a huge support to me this past year.
You know, Mike and I have asked these questions many times in many places, and I've come to say there's the four F's of the answer is faith, family, friends, and fur babies. Not necessarily in that order, but uh, here it is again, what people are putting in there, and those are the kinds of things when we have a strength-based approach, because something terrible has happened to a community, and that doesn't mean that we're involved in positive toxicity. I want to really clearly state that. But when we come in with this approach, we find that it lays a foundation of reminding people of their well-being, as like one survivor of a typhoon in the Philippines told us, "Thank you for reminding me what I already knew, but I had forgotten." Whew. So over to you, Mike.
Yeah, so as you're continuing to put things in chat, I would encourage you to read those. I mean, it's just like Elaine said, it's for me, it's the what else is also true. We often will say that in our model. And so these six wellness skills that we have, the community resiliency model, is about helping us tap into the what else is also true. And they can be shared across the lifespan with people of many ages, from I mean, we have a recording of I think a 3-year-old or 4-year-old teaching their 2-year-old brother these skills, on up to, I think, Elaine, you mentioned many times
My
using the
father.
skills with Grandpa Kenny, your father-in-law, who at the ripe old age of 105 was using the skills. Um, we can use these skills during and after a disaster. We can use them across cultures, with diverse people, with people with different abilities, and for community healing during recovery. So it can be used, these skills can be shared and used in so many different situations with so many different people.
So those skills of the community resilience model can be used individually, but also with groups. And we have different formats that we've put together, and we will be offering a course for our through our organization that will be a deeper dive into how you can use these wellness skills after disasters. And we've learned a lot from also just the work we've done around the world, but most recently the work that we've done in Los Angeles, which has been quite intense because of the fires. So the next part is that one of the things that we've learned is that to have a common language when we're talking to survivors. And our common language, and Mike, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, so this is one of the key concepts. The key concept of our model is this idea of our resilient zone, or what we might call the zone of well-being, or our okay zone. You know, things happen in life and our thoughts, feelings, and reactions move around in the okay zone. When we're in that okay zone, we can have a range of feelings, thoughts, emotions. We could feel excited, we can feel sad, we can be annoyed and angry, we can be tired. We can also feel that kind of Zen peacefulness that some of us may feel when we're in our zone, but it's not always going to be Zen and peaceful in our zone. It enables us to experience a wide range of emotions throughout the day, throughout many days. And so when we're in that okay zone, the important thing to notice is that we can manage our emotions, that we can do what we need to do. We can tackle the activities of daily living. We can approach life and think creatively and flexibly when we're in that zone, even when we're feeling angry or sad or any range of emotions.
Or
However,
even or even when we're in a disaster setting, and we've certainly
yes,
seen this over and over again, that when people can get into that zone of well-being, that they can manage, they can sign up for FEMA easily, they can stand in line for food, they can be contributing to the solutions that need to be created in their community when there has been wide-scale disaster. Because when we're in that zone of well-being, there's more blood flow going to our prefrontal cortex that helps us see life in a broader way, a more expanded way to be able to negotiate very, very difficult situations. But as life has, we have this thunderbolt that goes into our resilient zone, and we can get bumped into the high zone or the low zone. In the high zone, we've got tight muscles, we're angry, we're panicky. You know, we may regret things that oh my gosh, I have to apologize to my family because I said this, this, and that. But we also can get bumped into the low zone where we feel sad, disconnected, we can feel sleepy, numb. It's hard to get out of bed. And during and after disasters, people can go quickly between the high zone and the low zone and maybe not even feel they have a zone of well-being or a resilient zone. So this is why one of the reasons it's important that we give a common language to this, because I also want to let people know that it doesn't mean that you're weak or bad because you've gone into the high or low zone. It means you're incredibly human, because we have asked these questions, and I'm going to ask this to you right now. How many of you besides me have ever been in their high zone? I'm going to raise my hand. Um, Maybe some of you aren't raising your, oh, okay, Nikki's raising their hand. I can't see everybody. How many have been in their low? Okay, how about the low zone? Yes. How about both? Yes. So we help people understand this in a non-pejorative way. And we find this is especially important. Yes, it's important all the time, but especially because disasters disrupt our lives in such incredible ways. We may lose our home, our community. There's loss of life. There can be loss of pets. I mean, so many different things are so important to us in how we live our life. So this is a common language. We try to teach it quickly, and very simply. At the time of, like, we were at a school in the Palisades where 70% of the kids had lost their homes and the school burnt down. We were with the teachers on the first day, and they said, we only have 20 minutes. So what did we talk about? We talked about the zones, and we got everybody up and singing, and we did help now strategies. Teachers love to sing, I find, and and we they wanted to sing, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, after a big disaster. And they were laughing, and you could see that their joy was there, as well as incredible sadness as well. I mean, there can be both at the times of disasters. I think that's the other thing that we've learned. We haven't lost our ability to experience joy and happiness, although we can feel guilty about, is it okay to feel a bit better now when there's so much suffering? And I always say yes, because it's about both in life as we maneuver ourselves through the disasters that happen. So you may all know, some of you are CRM teachers already, but we have 6 skills in the community resiliency model. And you can, for free, listen to the skills on your own, which is free on our iChill app. And it's in English, Spanish, Ukrainian, Hebrew, and Arabic. And more languages are coming, but you can learn all the skills very simply. If you want to learn Ukrainian, you'll hear beautiful Vera's voice. If you want to learn it in English, it's my voice. So we have many different people that have been so kind to give their voice to our iChill app that, again, is free. So the next part are what I call the essentials. We call the essentials in disasters. And I'll talk about this and then turn it over to Mike for a bit. But one of the things that research has shown, why do we want to bring in a biological model, which CRM is a biological model? What does that mean? That means that we pay attention to sensations connected to our well-being in order to be able to shift away from sensations of distress. So some adults and children exhibit acute physiological distress after traumatic experience, including elevated heart rate, respiration rate. We may say that they're in sympathetic hyperarousal. This level of distress immediately after a traumatic experience has been shown to predict the later development of PTSD. So the sooner we bring in wellness skills after disaster, the sooner that we can intercept the hijacking of the nervous system. Most people will go back to their balanced nervous system state, but those that don't, we can help with the wellness skills come back into that zone of well-being. Mike, over to you.
Well, and I think this is it, right? It's about stabilization, especially in those early stages of disaster response, is that a lot of what we see of outcomes, whether emotional or thought, are driven by, influenced by that physiological response to stress. And so if we can teach these skills, not an either or thing, but as we're also working to help them recover in different ways, if we can help stabilize the nervous system, it will enable them possibly to be more effective and engage the services that they need in a way that they may not be able to otherwise. And so, of course, as we stabilize, right, it's about teaching the skills. It's about using conversational CRM skills while also making sure they have the necessities of water, food, physical comfort, touch. Those are all stabilizing factors. in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. And then, of course, we have another skill called Help Now or Reset Now that can also be implemented and utilized very effectively to help people stabilize their nervous system's response post-stress or post-trauma.
So, this next part are some of the essentials. So, self-care. Many people may be first responders here. I mean, and first responders can be anyone. I'm the one who shows up. You can be a teacher. You could be a community leader. You can be the person who works the library or the health food store. But self-care is very important, especially when there are disasters and you're responding to a disaster in your own community. You're a survivor and a helper. So, are you in your resilient zone or your zone of well-being? And if you're not, are there skills that you have besides the community resiliency model wellness skills to help you get back into that zone of well-being? I've seen many times, and there's even a term for it, people call them hungry helpers that are so out of their zone trying to help people during a disaster that they're not necessarily contributing to helping people, but actually it's making some people feel worse. So I think that not always are we the one that needs to respond at this particular moment. And I certainly can say for myself, there's times that I've had a lot of stresses in my life that I haven't been the best person that would respond to a disaster. Another person might be better, but having that self evaluation is really important for all of us. Giving reassurance, saying things to people like if it's an immediate after, and many of you I know have done this, I'm here with you now. I'll stay with you till help comes. I know we've called your family, the paramedics are coming. You're not alone. And being able to say those words to people, and sometimes those words cannot necessarily be processed. And that's where touch comes in, sometimes holding someone's hand. And that what the person will remember more than anything is that human touch of being not alone. And so we ground people through present moment awareness, and that's what touch does. But also, it can be, can I bring you a glass of water? Would a warm blanket be helpful for you right now or not? Maybe you'll have a blanket that you can bring forth. Would it be helpful even to find a more comfortable place to talk? Or if you could find a position that's more comfortable for you? It's using our skill of grounding, which is that present moment awareness, but it's in a conversational way that can help that person be in the present moment, not thinking about what just happened or what they may have to do in the future to recover from what's going on with them right now. And also to be aware that oftentimes when we have disasters, and those, I mean, I know you've had a lot in Georgia, is that people in the news talk about it when it happens. Oh, okay, the floods are here. They don't talk about the recovering process, which takes months, weeks, years, and can take a very long time. And so these kinds of things we're talking about is not just for the immediate afterwards, but it can be for the recovering process where these conversational skills, which is what we started with, who what or who is helping you get through right now, what or who has helped you through difficult times becomes kind of the go-to questions that are almost like tattooed to my arm. They're not, but they almost are because they're so helpful. And then the help now strategies that we'll talk about in just a second. So go ahead, Mike. Conversational resource,
So
big part, right?
yeah, so we have a skill called resourcing. And when we resource, we are tapping into a wellness, a template of wellness that's already in our nervous system. And so we do it in these situations conversationally. So asking questions from a strength-based perspective when talking to a group or a person in crisis or after a loss can help people return to their zone of well-being using just very specific questions like, I'm here to listen and offer support. Of course, that's that reassurance that kind of helps establish that relationship and that interaction. And then I love this phrase. We use it all the time. You can tell me as much or as little about what happened to you, because I think a lot of people assume that they have to tell you all the details about what their experience was in order to find healing, in order to find relief. And what we know from research, what we know from experience is that's not always the case. And in fact, sometimes talking about it more and more and more activates the nervous system over and over and over. And so it actually does more harm than good. And so it's helpful for us to phrase it in this way because a lot of people assume, oh, I got to talk about it. Well, no, you can tell me as much or as little as you want about it. And if they decide to tell us, okay, let's talk a little bit more about it and let's fold in occasions where we can pause and just hit the pause button so that that experience of talking about it doesn't become too much for their nervous system. So I can say that out loud to someone, if you want to tell me that, of course I want to hear what you need to say and what you want to say. is it okay if I occasionally pause? If we just pause together, and when we notice that it's becoming too much for your nervous system, is that okay? And asking it invitational, making sure that they know they have the choice to do it or not.
So these next questions are essential when there has been an existential threat. Who helped you the most in the beginning? Can you remember the moment that help arrived? Can you remember the moment that you knew you were going to survive? That question, I can't tell you how many times after disasters has been one of the most very important questions, because all of a sudden the person go, oh, I did survive. Oh, I remember now. It's when I got to my father's house, and he was waiting there for me, and he had a blanket, and he had made me dinner. I mean, what people will say are such sweet, resourceful, generous acts that usually have been extended towards them. So what we're trying to do again with the strength-based approach is not that we don't want to hear about what happened to them, but we also want to see what else is true. So even asking questions, who else made it through? What gives you the strength to get through this now? Who or what is helping you the most now? And you might create your own questions with this strength-based perspective that may be pertinent to how you talk about things in the world that can elicit that same kind of response.
And can I
So,
add really quick,
yeah,
Elaine, to that
yeah,
last point?
yes.
As a psychologist, I would argue, I can make a strong, as a human being, I guess, I can make a strong argument that when we use these questions, we're tapping into the what else is also true. We're not ignoring, like you said, Elaine, we're not ignoring the distress and what they've gone through. I would argue we're getting a more full picture of what that experience entails, because it also entails those elements of survival as well, and enabling them to see that. They don't often pause and go, oh, let me tell you when I survived. That's not a question they get asked a lot when they've gone through something. Most neighbors, most friends, most family members want to, may ask with good intention, what happened? Well, this question taps into another part of their experience that doesn't often get tapped into, and it is part of that experience. And so I would argue it makes a fuller, richer experience.
Well, and I think the other thing is that sometimes we say, I'm so tired of saying what happened. I don't want to talk about it anymore. People keep asking me.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do. It feels uncomfortable. And so when we give these kinds of questions to you as other alternatives, it helps again expand their knowledge, their self-knowledge too, of what else was resourceful about the experience. Thanks, Mike. So I want to talk a little bit about when a person becomes stuck in the higher low zone, because we mentioned already the help now to reset now can be very helpful. We are going to talk a little bit about these. This skill is a way to quickly help move the nervous system back into the direction of the resilient zone. We have a CRIM teacher in Raleigh, North Carolina, who was working in one of the hurricane centers. And he said what he did mostly was helping the teenagers with the help now strategies, and the kids were really way bumped out of their zone, some of them that were they were very afraid, and the help now strategies, I'm here they are right now. And he said the one he used the most was pushing the hands or back against the wall, because there can be a lot of energy in the body, right? You're at a shelter, and what do you do with all that energy? And he had a line of kids just pushing hard against the wall. Some of them thought it was funny, but what there was an intentionality in it, because he knew that when he invited the kids to do that, they were releasing some of that energy that can get connected to the high zone behaviors that sometimes gets people into trouble after disasters. But there's an array of about 10 different help now strategies that we put together, but that doesn't mean that there aren't more. Like bringing, and that's why one of the things I've done a lot in disasters is bringing a person a drink of water. Sometimes I'll say, well, maybe it will be helpful if we just took a little walk together around the shelter, and let's as we're walking, it's like it's a good thing to sometimes just pay attention to how our feet are making contact with the ground. So these are very simple strategies that can help the person get back into that zone of well-being. And there's ways that we can say them in conversational ways. Would it be helpful to go for a walk together? Sometimes it helps to get that energy of anxiousness out by pushing against the wall. You want to do it with me? Sometimes it helps to look around the room and see what catches our attention. Is there a color you like, for example? So you can see, I'm not going to read every single one, but you can see that asking people in that way, in a conversational way, also doesn't make them feel like, does she think there's something wrong with me? No, there's something right with you. But sometimes when we do these things together, it can help us get through a difficult time. And we can also tell people about the iChill app, which we've seen many people download as they've been in shelters saying, oh gosh, and later saying, it really helped us. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah. So when people, of course, have gone through situations and disasters and trauma like this, they're going to notice sensations that are associated with distress. And so a lot of one of the foundational skills of the key skill of our model is tracking, paying attention to sensations of the body. The distress is going to be there. It plays out in our body. It may be elevated heart rate, maybe muscle tension, it may be a tight jaw, any number of things. But shift and stay is a skill where we can shift from that distress, intentionally shift from that distress to maybe using the other skills or using or paying attention to a part of the body that doesn't feel that kind of distress. And so it could be just simply asking, well, do you notice anywhere else that doesn't feel so tight? Even if it's your left earlobe or, you can do any number. I mean, and so shifting that attention then shifts to a part of the body that feels more neutral or pleasant, or maybe a skill that fosters more neutral or pleasant sensations, because those sensations that are more pleasant or neutral can help communicate to the parts of the brain that in this moment right now we're not in immediate danger, and that can help soothe the nervous system and bring it back into balance and come back into the resilience zone.
And this is the biology of the model. And this is so, I want to amplify what Mike just said, like highlight it in yellow, because doing this is what's going to to mitigate the impact of what the nervous system is getting stuck in that hyper aroused state, are these very simple strategies. So I want to talk a little bit about this, because this is also something where you can use the skill of shift and stay. So after a disaster, there can be horrible visual images of loss, of, seeing your house go down the river. Um, there can be sound images like loud sounds or sirens, and there can be smells that are very unpleasant. We certainly heard a lot about the smells of the fires here in Los Angeles. So we can ask someone in a conversational way, sometimes if that visual image gets to be too much, can you imagine a memory? Can you take that memory and move it as far away from you as possible? If the person works in imagination, I've had a person say, I just sent that image onto the moon and it's away from me now. And when they said that, you could see they took a deep breath. They accessed their parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest part that helps us feel better in our mind, our body, and our spirit. But even with sound images, can you imagine a pleasant or soothing sound? I've had a person say to me, well, I imagine myself putting headsets on and listen to my favorite music. And I said, well, what is your favorite music? And even though the music wasn't playing at that moment, we can bring the memory of that music into the present moment to mitigate the intensity of the distressing sounds that may be throwing us off of our resilient zone. And then smell image is the same thing. Can you imagine a pleasant or soothing smell? Sometimes people bring up essential oils or the smell of chocolate chip cookies. That's one that Mike often uses, that can help their nervous system come back into a balanced state. These are very simple interventions that can actually, again, help the hijacking of the nervous system that can get taken away by these kind of automatic reminders, that can spark our memory after the event is over and feel like the event is happening again in the present moment. So this is here's a conversational way, and we're going to be giving you a copy of the PDF of this slide presentation that is more or less what I just said, and that you can use that for the future. So um, we want to let you know that there's many ways that you can learn more about CRIM. We have a website. We have a lot of free offerings on the website. We have some new research, and Mike, I'm going to ask you to talk about what we just got published, because it's partly because of the great state of Georgia and Emory University.
Yes, we co-authored an article with Chance Nicholson and Dr. Ingrid Duva and Dr. Lindy Graby at Emory University, called "The Body Can Balance the Score Using a Somatic Self-Care Intervention to Support Well-Being and Promote Healing." We just got notice that it was published. I think we can put a link in chat for those of you who would want that. There it is. For those of you who would want to read it, it was very exciting to get that. It does a wonderful, wonderful job of outlining CRIM. What do we call it? The magnum opus of our writings on CRIM.
Of CRIM, yes. And
Yeah.
I really encourage you too, if you're maybe you're already a CRIM teacher or you're thinking about CRIM, I think it gives you really all the elements of why it's important to bring a biological model into whatever setting you're working with. And certainly after disasters, we've seen the importance of that. Um, Mike, is there anything more you want to say about that?
No, I think sorry, there is I believe we spent some time talking about even the theoretical underpinnings that helped support and inform the model. And I know, Elaine, I mentioned that in part because a question was raised in chat, and I think it would be wonderful to hear you speak to it. As it says, this is so interesting. Was any of this based on DBT therapy? I noticed some crossover, but curious. And I know, being the key developer of the model, I know it was, you were inspired by many different elements.
Yeah, I was, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. First of all, one of our, in fact, Lindy Grabby, who's one of our key ambassadors of CRIM in Georgia, she was trained in DBT, and we do address it in the article. And DBT, although it has many relaxation exercises and some things that are very helpful in terms of wellness skills, it doesn't work with the sensory system in the same way that the community resiliency model does. But many people, I think one of the things about CRIM is it dances well with others. So that many people who use other kinds of modalities have integrated the CRIM skills, for example, into DBT as well, and found that to be very helpful. But when I was creating the model, I had taken Peter Levine's somatic experiencing, and I thought he had some excellent ideas. But I'm a social worker by training. I was very interested in making biological based skills accessible to a wide population. When I took that training, it took me 3 years. I have much respect for Dr. Levine. But I wanted something that I could use very quickly. I was working in the inner city of San Bernardino County, California, working with folks that were pretty marginalized, and also helpers that would not have had the kind of money it would take to pay for that big 3 year training. I just happened to have the chairman of my department that paid for me to go at a time in my life that I didn't have a lot of money. So we really tried to create something that was accessible, could be learned quickly. But I have to say, it was inspired to me by the work of Peter Levine, but also the work of Insoo Kim Berg, who created an intervention that was about people, solution focused psychotherapy, that people knew more about the answers to their problems than, let's say, the therapist did, which at the time, when she's now passed, but when she was writing, that was revolutionary at a time when probably psychoanalytical training was at its height. But also, I read the work. I was, being a social worker, and I worked in a rehab hospital. I worked with occupational therapists, and when I worked with occupational therapists, they really showed me in terms of the importance of movement, the importance of how the nervous system can be regulated by moving the large muscles of the body. So I was directed towards the work of Dr. Jean Ayres, Ayres. She's also passed, but she was back in the 60s. She was saying, we need to pay attention to neuroscience. We need to pay attention to how the body is involved in distressing experiences, because the mind and body are connected. And those of you that know occupational therapy, they do a beautiful job in terms of connecting those two. But the one thing that people don't necessarily know about me, that I don't talk about a lot, but a little bit in our mental health model, is I was a childbirth educator. I was trained in the Lamaze method. I was also a doula. And you go, well, what does that have to do with the community resiliency model, Elaine? It taught me that I could be a gentle guide, taking people through something, guiding them through a very painful experience. And so when we talk about helping people mitigate the impact of trauma and stress, I thought, well, why couldn't we do something similarly to that regarding other things that happen to human beings besides childbirth, for example, where people can be guided in gentle ways? So that was a huge influence on me. And then, any of us that have created a biological model, a somatic model, and I use biology on purpose because I also try to simplify language that's used by mental health professionals, because most of the folks that I talked to didn't know what, they'd never heard of the word somatic, but they knew the word biology. So I'd say, well, it's about the biology of your human nervous system. That's why I try to make things, I think I have a talent of making complex things simple. I go, you got to break an accelerator of your nervous system. And you know what? You just need to learn how to put that brake on a little bit. And I think you might be even able to feel a little bit better. So when I would use metaphors, and that's one, I have many metaphors, that people, depending on where they were and where they came from, could understand that. But I think the other thing that is so important is that when we've created CRIM, I really felt it was important that if we were going to mitigate trauma and stress in the world, and I say the world because we're like in 77 countries now, unbelievably, um, is that we need something that's accessible and simple that can work across nations. And we all have a nervous system that reacts the same way when we are stressed and traumatized, and also that we have a biology of healing, and that's what the article is all about. The nervous system balances a score that, yes, it can, yes, take us off of our game and take us out of our lane. But if we learn how to read our nervous system, it also can help us be able to sense our well being again and not to be trapped by the windstorms of our body that happen because of our distress. So, Mike, is there another question in the chat? I feel like there's another question.
Just Alex.
Yeah, do you mind going back to the previous slide?
Okay, just a second. I'll have to put them back up again. Let's see. Oops. Hold on.
Either way. And if anyone wants to come off mute and ask Elaine and Mike any questions, or if you have anything you want to add to the conversation, please feel free.
Are you seeing the slide now? I don't see it up.
No, it's not coming up.
I don't know why that's happening, honestly.
That's
It's
okay.
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 No worries.
All right. So, is there a reason? Is there something on the slide that you want me to repeat?
Just to go back to the resources, but we'll share the presentation with
Yeah.
everyone in a follow-up email.
Well, and also we can put in the chat traumaresourceinstitute.com.
Mhm.
And you can go to our website. We have lots of stuff on our website that you can go to, where my book, Building Resiliency to Trauma, which actually is a collaborative book. Mike and I wrote a chapter. Dr. Lindy Grabby from Emory, she contributed to a chapter as well. And I have many co-authors of the chapters. And just this last week, I learned that they have made an audiobook of it. So if you go to Amazon, you can download the audio. It's the first time. So that happened. Actually, that happened on my birthday, which I think
Last week was a big week for Elaine.
May
Published
27th.
article,
Yeah, May
right?
27th. Yeah, was my I learned about the audiobook, and May 26th we learned that healthcare had published our article. So we were very excited about that.
Wonderful.
Vera has her hand up. Dear Vera, please. Yes.
Hello, Elaine, and hello, Michael. It's so good to be with you here today. I'm on the road right now, so I'm not able to join the camera. I wanted to thank you again for all the work that you've been doing with the Ukrainian community and you know, my country and my people. And I wanted to share just anecdotally. I was able to teach my family some of the skills, CRIM skills, and just a couple of weeks ago, or actually, I'm sorry, maybe even a week ago, now there was a really, really hard time in the city where my family is. There was a lot of bombing happening, really scary, really devastating. And my grandmother, she, during the bombing, she grounded herself by sitting on a stool, and she tracked her own body, recognizing that her mouth was dry, and so she got some water, and then she started resourcing by watching the videos of her great granddaughter, my baby, Kalina, and just feeling better. And these are just some simple things that she was able to do in such a horrific situation that I'm just so grateful to you for teaching me and helping me spread that in my community. And thank you.
Vera, thank you so much for that. I just have to say, we are in Ireland right now, and there's a group called Christian Aid that's based in the United Kingdom, and they have paid for 6 therapists from Ukraine to come to Ireland, and they're here right now with us. And they learned the first 2 days. We did it hybrid. We taught them the wellness skills, CRIM, and we heard the same thing from them. They said one of the people I taught said it was first time since the war that they had a sense of their well-being again. So not only can you use it when the bombings are happening, but you can use it afterwards in war. And considering all the things that are happening around the world, but in our own country, the gun violence that happens, I know a bit about that, not only in Los Angeles, but in Georgia. And we have one of our CRIM teachers, Dr. Jordan Murphy, working very much in Georgia with trying to end gun violence there, is that this is very important what Vera is saying. We can help people when there's suffering in their community with things that are outside of their control, with the skills. And, I guess we have the belief, Vera, that the more that we can do that, then we can reduce the impact of that physiological reaction that happens after traumatic experience of getting stuck in those high zone states and feeling like I can never get back into balance again. And knowing that some of you may be healthcare workers, what happens to our nervous system if we get stuck in that hyper aroused state? We can also then go into a low zone state, and it impacts over time our immune system, because the hormones that are meant for short action are being pumped constantly, right? The stress hormones. And so that impacts our well being. So, what if we can get these kinds of skills to wider populations? How might that change the world? And I think in Georgia, I'm so proud of the state of Georgia and Resilient Georgia and all the work that people are doing within the state, not only in the populated areas like Atlanta, but in rural Georgia. That it's exciting for me to hear from all of you what you're doing, because you are our well-being workers. And wouldn't it be nice to have just all well-being workers in the world saying, if you're out of your zone, I can give you some strategies that could help you. You want to try them or not? We always say it's an invitation to see if people would like to give it a go, to see if it might help them. And even sometimes I would say tough guys, I know a lot of police officers and stuff, and they go, oh, the social worker, what are you going to teach me, Elaine? And one time Mike and I were doing a group of a training, was for a whole group of sheriffs from LA County. And it happened to be friends of my next door neighbor, who is actually the police chief of one of our neighboring cities. And they were all at the horrible Las Vegas shooting. And Mike and I went in there, and one of the law enforcement guys said at the end, he goes, well, if I would have known this was like this, that you kind of were helping us not only with our well-being, I would have had my wife come. I thought you were going to traumatize us again, because he had been through so much kind of the debriefing they do, that he thought that's what we're going to do. And that's why we started with those strength-based questions. Think of that the next time there's something in your community, in your family. Those make such a difference in reminding us again, what else is true. So, thank you for Vera coming on board and reminding us too how we can help people, and that there's things happening around the world that affect us all in the United States, because we're a much smaller world than we used to be, in my book. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And, it's just amazing. And we are so happy to have you both here. Even though you're across the pond doing wonderful training in Ireland, we just appreciate you so much. This is recorded, so we will have this presentation up on our website sometime next week. So please check in on that if you'd like to share what Elaine and Mike have presented today. And I'll also be sending a follow-up email with all the resources that we've shared, as well as their presentation. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your Thursday and your weekend, and take care of yourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Bye.
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.